In this chapter, we're going to work on the lines, which are in a way the most important features because they define our context and our faults, and they therefore bound the polygons, which we will make new. And you can see here in our last chapter we did the points, and so they give us some information about what's there in terms of their coloring. So let's turn the lines on. So this would be something you might see coming out of your Strabo spot as well. And so these are going to need some editing. We'll also do some symbolization, and then we'll make some more lines to finish the map. So first, let's symbolize these lines. If you just click on the line, that'll give us the symbology tool. And we're going to want to do a symbolize layer by category. And so let's look at our attribute table. So this mode, this kind of screen layout is what you'll want to get set up, and we probably can make this a little lower so you don't need to see all of them at once. But you see here we have a trace, trace quality and then trace type. So let's do this, and we're actually going to do it seems like slightly reverse order. We'll do trace type, and then the second field is a trace quality. And so this gives us then, this is below there, we see all of the combinations that we have in my Strabo spot, so the features that I had identified. So you can see they're already colored separately by their type, but that's just kind of a random coloring. So if I click here, let's start with the ones we know. So contact approximate, if I just click on it, and I still have, because when I did the points, I had that Geology 24K loaded, so if you don't see that, but main thing is go back to the points video and see where we did that. Contact approximately located. So if I go back, so now contact approximately located has the dash symbology, which if you look on the map, looks correct. So let's do contact concealed, which is this one. That's contact concealed queried. That's maybe okay. You can, oh no, here it is. And you can work with these, you know, there's some obvious ones, but then if you have some other lines in your data set, you can give them the stylization that you feel like is appropriate. Okay, contact inferred. And geologic structure, this is going to be our fault known, which is right here, fault certain. Now you may, because I have a smaller amount of data in my data set, you may have some other ones here, and you just keep going through them. So for example, this bedding, I know this is my barns basically, so I'm going to look for something that looks appropriate. There's lots of faults in here, and you could choose, you could say, well, actually I want to make it look like, you know, even this major road or something. So you don't have to use the geologic ones for special cases like that. So you can see on my map where those two popped out, and maybe that's good to help draw attention to it. So you have some choices here. And then there's a couple, like there's a blank one here that must have just have been a line with no attributes. Prominent, like this pink, this offset line, so we could find it later. Editing, we might change its attribution or otherwise delete it. And same thing down here, we've got some other lines with no clear attribution, so I'm going to use that same prominent color, the pink, so I can remind myself to look for those two. Another line, maybe I forgot to label it. We can work on that labeling once we're editing, so we'll just kind of highlight those guys so we can clean them. Okay, now that we've got our lines symbolized, we're going to make some more and also edit the ones that we have. So if you switch over to edit, this edit tab up here, we can see create, modify, and select. First thing I'm going to do is I'll just pull this attribute panel down a little bit. And first thing just to highlight is if I select something like this, it takes a moment, but then if I scroll along, I can, if I click on zoom to, I can find the one that's been selected, and I can look for it here. There it is. So that's the one. It has kind of incomplete attribution, whereas some of these other ones are more complete. You can see. Okay, so let's go back out a little bit, and you need to move around. You kind of go between the map panel, this explorer, so I can maneuver. So let's delete this. Let's close that panel. And up here if I go back to edit, I want to go ahead and create. What's nice is because we have these already, if I just click on one of them, I can make some more of those. So for me, I'm going to do something a little bit artificial, but I'm going to put a known contact. So you see I get the tool open, and I'm going to draw from the boundary of the map over into Doom and then up to here, because this is going to be the boundary of my demo. So you can make a temporary line like this, delete it or use it. And so this is just for me so that when I close contacts in this demo, I'll just stop there. When I've finished, I double click to finish that line, and now my tool is ready to make another contact. So now we just have to sort of systematically work through. So I'm just going to start here in the upper left, and it looks like I did a decent job on the mapping here, but let's select and see what's what. So when I have the selection tool and I draw kind of across that feature to grab it, it takes a moment to select, and then if I click on attributes here, I can see what it is. So that's an approximate contact, and it must be bounding alluvium and colluvium. Let's do this one. And that one is another approximate contact. Okay, so that one's colluvium against Pioneer. So let's just, so this part looks pretty good actually, but I want to zoom in. I need to do some cleaning. So I use my central mouse wheel there. And I know I'm looking at approximate contact, but if I look at these two, I know I have, if I highlight this one, yeah, that's the known contact Pioneer against Dripping Spring. So that's probably one I got in the field that I was more confident about, and it also has the one right above it here, which we know we stylized in that tan color, should be the barn. Yeah, so no embedding barns. Good. What I might want to do is to edit this lower line, because it doesn't make sense to have the same contacts next to each other. One's approximate and one's known. I'm going to do select that line that I want to work on. I'm going to click on modify, and it brings up modify features here, and so you can see split. I also happen to have it up here, so click on it there. And so the idea of the split is we just draw a little line across it, split it. So the intersection of those two will split it. So now if I hit this finish, it should be split. And so if I go select again, yeah, so see now it's been changed. So now I want to edit the vertices, which you could look for over here, modify. So now I want to, basically I'm going to pull this end point over, get it to touch that one, and maybe move this out so a little bit. And then the next one, okay, so we have to do this finish, that edit. Let's go get our selection. Okay, this one's already highlighted. Let's grab this vertex here, and I want to basically get it to touch against that. It takes a moment to grab these guys. And then again, finish. So you can see it's a little bit slow, but this is how we can edit our lines. And we can go, now if I just click here, nowhere, then I'll unselect it. We can see how things look. So this is a little bit tedious, but we want to honor, the contacts the way we think they are. So let's zoom out a little bit. So now I'm going to go through here, and I will do some cleanup, and kind of finish this part of the map. Let's go make some new lines. You can see it kind of incomplete mapping. So if you go to the base maps down here and turn off the hill shade, turn on the ortho photo. Okay, so now we have the ortho image. We can see, remember how well that mescal is up there. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. Yep. And I have some of my lines are here. They're not too bad from the field, but I want to clean them up. Before we get started on some drawing is to talk to you about snapping. So if you click on this, so snapping, what that does is it makes it a lot easier. So see, when I clicked it, it turned it off. So if I click it, it's blue, it means it's turned on. If you click on the little arrow, what it does is it allows you to kind of have this sticky mouse, so when you're drawing, it'll go and touch or snap to the feature of interest. And so these, you can turn on what it's sensitive to, where you can see point, endpoint, vertex, edge, intersection, midpoint, tangent. So we're going to want to snap to almost everything, just because it'll make things simpler. So if I click on here, and you see they're already set, you can go ahead and hit the other ones. But if that becomes annoying, then You can turn them off. And then the other thing is snapping tolerance. Okay, so what you can do then to set the snapping distance, you could set the snapping tolerance manually, but or interactively, but I prefer to do it here. And I make this more like about 50 pixels, but if you start snapping too many annoying things, you can change it. And so that'll help us when we start to draw. Clean up this mescal. And so I'm going to start at the top. So I'll go to Explore, but we can start at the top. So all I have to do is go back to my lines. The contact, we're going to say this is known. So I click it to get that tool. And then I'll want to basically start at the map boundary and start basically clicking out the vertices as they go. And you can see this a little bit complex pattern here. So I'll double click it there when I get to that edge. Now that I've double clicked it, I can just quickly do another one. Now this one I'm curving because I'm going to basically have the other side be colluvium. Double click. Okay, so now that we've cleaned up some of that mapping, I'm going to go back to the hill shade because it draws a little bit faster on my laptop. And I can see the lines better. So I've got that fault. Maybe it's okay. I'm going to then select this other feature. And now I want to, if I go to my edit here, I want to edit these vertices, which remember also have the modify tool out here, edit vertices right here. So I want to basically pull this vertex in so I can get it to touch the fault, because we can't, basically and then just click here to finish. So the contacts, there can't be gaps, otherwise it's like it's leaky or something. They have to contain everything. Okay, so notice here, these gaps are going to not be good. So let's even just turn off the hill shade so we can see better. Get our edit vertex tool handy. And so I'm going to click on that guy. And I can then, if I grab this endpoint here, let's just touch it to the other one. Let's get this endpoint, touch it there. All right, let's do another one, snap it there. Now, they've been accepting their changes, but I think it's good to have the practice of finishing each time. That'll really solidify these edits. You have to be really careful. You hate to lose information. And speaking of which, let's make sure we save often. And it's important, notice I'm going to click here to save the edits, because sometimes there's a confusion between saving the project, which would be up here, and saving the edits. And in a way, it's more important to save these edits than the project, because you can always open the edited shapefile in a new project. So I've done some cleaning, and I'm just going to basically stop talking and just go through and clean up the rest of my map. And I'll make a few comments here and there as I go. Okay, I found a little bit of barns right in here. I know it's in there because I know it's inside this point. So let's just select and highlight that point. And if I hit the attributes, I see that a feature is barns. So I know that the point was on barns there. So let's go ahead and add a small line, bedding known. So I know it's along the edge of the ridge here, so I'm going to click kind of through our point and a little bit further and double click. And there it is. So that shows this kind of way as you're going. You don't have to augment these maps a lot, but if you want to edit them to satisfy yourself, you can. It doesn't hurt after creating something like that to click that the drawing is complete. Okay, here's the case where I've selected this line and I just want to delete it. It's a couple of different ways, but the easiest way I've found is if you go down here in your lines table and you figure out which one it is, which is the one that's blue, then you can select it and click delete. And in this case, yes, we do. It can be difficult to undo something like this. Okay, I spent some time and I was cleaning up my mapping. The main thing is I'm thinking ahead to our polygon activity, and so every polygon has to be contained by the contact. So I was looking to check for that, and then also checking for the boundaries. So for example, this little hanging contact here may or may not be a problem. Maybe edit it just to try to bring the contact in a little bit closer to touch the other one, so there's nothing can leak out of that bounding set of lines. So I'm going to select, I'm going to edit my vertices, grabbed it, and I'm going to touch it. And so then here I'll say yes, and then again, as I mentioned, we want to save. So edit, save our edits, and then also let's save the project. Remember, they're not necessarily saving the same thing, so you want to make sure you do both, because you don't want to lose your work from the editing. So I'm going to zoom out, and I think I'm ready now to work on our polygons. So we'll pick that up in our next chapter.